Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing a VCT Pacific season preview for Global Esports. Global Esports is an esports organization out of India. They competed in the Pacific League last year. I didn't know much about this organization going into the 2023 season, but I had heard good things about their roster. Hearing that they might potentially be a dark horse to be competitive within that Pacific League. They had, I believe it was a full 10-man roster, so they were able to, switch players out during matches, and that might be beneficial to their overall play. So they can swap players out for different comps and all the same. There's been a couple attempts at a 10-man roster. In terms of the impact that it's had so far, it hasn't had too much of an impact. I do see potential in having a lot of players on your roster, but mainly just for practice purposes. But either way, it unfortunately didn't work for this org. Looking at their 2023 placements, unfortunately, it's really not great. Pretty much all bad across the board in lock-in. They had a 17th to 32nd placement Pacific. They were 8th. And the LCQ, they placed 5th to 6th. So they never really found their footing. Again, they came in with not super high expectations, but they had SK Rossi, they had Moniette, they had Aaron, who was an import from Americas. He came over from the XSET roster. So it looks like, hey, they have a decent little mix here. This could be something good. There's some talent here for sure. Unfortunately, it just really didn't work. So they opt to go for essentially an entire rebuild of the roster. Players out are Moniette, Aaron, Ronsky, Texture, Bossi, and SK Rossi. SK Rossi was a long-standing member of this organization, so it is unfortunate for fans of him to see him leave the team. Moniette was their best player. I put him as the MVP for 2023, but unfortunately they weren't able to keep him. He moves on to Paper Rex. In terms of players in, however, they have Benkai, Blaze Kane, Russ, and Polsey. So pretty much an entire new rebuild. They're not going with a 10-man roster this time. They have these new players plus Lightning Fast, who was on the roster last year. They also bring back a player that was previously on the organization called Skills. I didn't put him down as players in because he is a substitute and he's already been on the roster. I don't know how much he's going to play. Right now, he is listed as a sub, but Lightning Fast didn't play a lot last year. Benkai also didn't play a lot last year, so they'll probably have Skills play every now and then. He's been playing in off-season events, so this is something that we could see. For championships won by this org, it is 0 thus far, and unfortunately, they just really couldn't find their footing last year in the Pacific League. There definitely was an opening. The Pacific League is quite top-heavy, especially last year. Aside from Paper X and DRX basically having a lock on those top 2 spots, there was an opening for a team like Global Esports to jump into that third-place spot. But they just really couldn't get their stuff together as a roster, and it just ended up being a disaster through and through. So with this new roster, what can these players do? So we're going to be looking at the 2023 stats for all of these players. Some played more than others. The main concern I have with this roster is a lot of these players didn't play a lot of Valorant last year. Looking first at Lightning Fast, who was previously on the roster, he only played 2 maps the entire year. In those 2 maps, so just that one match, he had 24 kills, 27 deaths, 8 assists for KD ratio of 0.88. He played Raze in those 2 maps, so I don't know if he's going to be on Duelist for them, but I don't know. I also don't know if he's going to be playing that much, so we'll see how his roles end up shaking out if he gets consistent play. Looking at Benkai, he was cast off from the Paper X roster. He only played a little bit during the season. He started the year with Paper X on the active roster at lock-in, and then a couple matches into the regular season. Clearly something had to be changed about Paper X. They were losing games that they should have won. So Benkai, unfortunately, was the person that had to sit out. So he didn't play the rest of the year, and now he's on this roster, hoping to be a consistent member. I don't think he competed in the one off-season event that they were at. He's really entertaining. He's a good player. He was an IGL for Paper X. That's not his role on Global this time. So hopefully that can just let him refocus and be able to just focus on the roles that he has to play. With Paper X last year, in the short amount of games he played, he had 130 kills, 133 deaths, 54 assists for a KD ratio of 0.93. He played Killjoy, Sage, Breach, and Viper. So 2 Sentinels, 1 Initiator, and Smoke. So they were kind of throwing stuff at the wall for him. I do think he's probably better on just that Sentinel role, and that hopefully is the role that he's going to be having on this Global Esports roster. Moving on to Blaze Kane. Now, this guy might be their biggest addition of the offseason and probably their best. Blaze Kane was on Boom Esports. They were trying to make it through Ascension in the Pacific League, and unfortunately, they lost to Bleed. So Blaze Kane moves on from that roster and joins a Tier 1 roster in Global Esports. Last year on Boom, he had 1,210 kills, 1,040 deaths, 532 assists for a KD ratio of 1.16. He played Sova, Astra, Viper, Omen, and Killjoy. So mainly a smokes player, and hopefully that is the role that he gets to focus on, but he's able to be flexible and play Initiator and Sentinel if you really need it. Killjoy might be a bit worse in today's meta, so I don't know if we're going to see her as much. Sova, it looks like he's the only player that played that character last year, but I don't know if that's where you're going to want him. But hey, maybe that's how that ends up shaking out. Moving on to Russ, who will be the IGL of this team. He played in Tier 2 last year. He had 576 kills, 603 deaths, 405 assists for KD ratio of 0.95. He played Sky, Breach, and KO, so all Initiator characters there. So not bad numbers from Russ there, especially not for an Initiator. You definitely would want there to be more kills and for a positive KD ratio, but not terrible numbers for an IGL. I don't know if he was playing IGL on the roster he was on previously, but hopefully he's able to adapt to the Tier 1 level. Moving on to Pulsey, he comes in from Finland. He had 170 kills, 174 deaths, 82 assists for a KD ratio of 0.97. He also played in Tier 2 in Europe last year. He played Reyna, Phoenix, and Breach. A small sample size for Pulsey there. That's not the only matches that he played are the ones where I pulled these numbers from. This was just from the Challengers League matches that he played. It's looking like he's going to be their duelist player, so you might want those numbers to be a bit better than they are, but maybe they're scrimming well and maybe he fits in well with the team. Overall, it doesn't look like a bad roster. I see that they're taking their chances on 3 players that played in Tier 2 last year, and that's not a big deal. As some people will point out, the gap between Tier 1 and Tier 2 might not even exist because Tier 1 is just the partnership teams. So like the talent level might be the same in the Tier 2 leagues, but at the same time, I do think there is a difference, and you can see it sometimes. And you know, like the players that get allowed into Tier 1 usually are very proven players. So I don't think this is a bad roster by any means. I like Blaze Kane. I think Benkai is a good addition. We'll see what happens with Lightning Fast, because I don't know if he's going to get a ton of playing time. And Russ adapting to Tier 1 as an IGL is definitely going to be interesting to see. But it does look like it should work better structure-wise than last year's roster. Looking at their map pool from last year, it's kind of a disaster. They don't have a lot of good maps. They have a lot of bad maps. Pearl was the best map. They had a 4-3 record on it with attack win percentage of 55%, defense was 50. Icebox, small sample size, but they did well in it, so I put it down. They were undefeated technically, but they only played it twice. They had a 2-0 record on it with an attack win percentage of 70% and a defense win percentage of 50%. So Pearl's no longer in the map pool. Icebox has returned, so if they can stay consistent on Icebox, that should soften the blow of losing Pearl as your better map. But at the same time, it's not like they were perfect on Pearl either. They were one match loss away from being negative in it, so it doesn't really matter. Again, their map pool was not very strong, as evident from their worst maps. First off with Split, they had a 1-4 record on it, 43% on attack, defense was 44%. Really bad numbers there. Haven, another map they don't have to worry about next year, but they went 1-3 on it with attack win percentage of 52, defense was 44. And for the rest of the maps, yeah, not a lot of good numbers there. You can look on VLR, they really just couldn't find their footing with any map really. Like their best one, as I said, is Icebox technically, but they only play it twice because it was taken off the map pool later in the year. It was there at the start. So overall, I do like this roster better than last year. They have to figure out their map pool. They've lost so far in the offseason events that they played, so it's not really promising. But hopefully for India, this being their only big Valorant team, hopefully they can find a way to stay competitive and to make sure that the Pacific doesn't be as top heavy as it was last year. My guess is that they're going to be fighting with T1 for that 3rd place spot in the Pacific. But hey, maybe somehow this works really well and they end up competing for 1st or 2nd. Also, I just want to say a quick thing. Apparently 2% of my viewer base is from India. So if you're watching from India, thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know, how do you think that this team is going to do? Do you think Global is going to be better than last year? Do you think it's going to be another disaster? Or is this roster going to be competing for international titles? Let me know in the comments below. Click like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.